Hi, this is Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, and you're listening to BriefingsDirect. Our next business innovation thought leadership discussion focuses on how new modes of buying and evaluating goods and services is disrupting business procurement. We'll hear now from a leading industry analyst on how machine learning, cloud services, and artificial intelligence-enabled human agents are all combining to change the way that companies can order services, buy goods, and even hire employees and contractors. To learn more about how new trends are driving innovation into invoicing and spend management, please join me now in welcoming Pierre Mitchell, Chief Research Officer and Managing Director at Azul Partners, where he leads the Spend Matters procurement research activities. Welcome, Pierre.
Thanks, Dana. Very happy to be here.
Well, we're seeing an awful lot of disruption in how companies can buy and sell goods and how suppliers can reach new markets. What are the pain points that's causing this disruption? Or is it technology that's arising and causing it? Is this a driven problem-solution tension, or is this disruption strictly from a technology perspective from your viewpoint?
Well, I think the technology is actually disruptive. I mean, in the old days, a lot of procurement executives will just say, well, the technology is really just enabling our existing process. It's really just, a tool to automate our processes that we're looking, to do. And that's starting to change. Technology is fundamentally disrupting value chains. You see what's happening in the B2C world, and you look at the disintermediation that's happening with, if you just look at Amazon, look at Uber, look at Airbnb, having big impacts. And that's not limited to a B2C world. I mean, if you look at, what is the impact of Amazon and Uber and, Airbnb, and now even with, someone like Tradeshift, what's going to be, the impact on the B2B, travel process, on the supply chain process, on freight forwarding, on, logistics. It's going to be a major impact. So, you can say technology is just automating, but it's not. It's actually just enabling, new, much more innovative value chains. And it is just truly disruptive. I know it's a buzzword out there, but it really is.
And so when we think about applying a cloud architecture so that you can deliver services to anywhere fairly inexpensively, when you think about the data and analytics that can be brought to bear on any problem and the access to that data, that seems to be a big part of it. From what you've heard at Tradeshift's recent announcements around Go and skills, what are the factors here that combine in a way that you think are perhaps quite new or something that we haven't seen before?
Well, the skills terminology is a bit interesting. I mean, I think when you look at the skills, they are really talking about a fairly atomic or higher level kind of business process as a service. And if you're going to do business process as a service, it's not just having a bunch of cloud apps, because cloud apps, are basically a more efficient machine tool, if you will. I mean, just taking an on-premise app and deploying it in the cloud is certainly, great in terms of making it more efficient for the deployment. But an empty app is an empty app. What really brings the app to, deliver a business outcome, to deliver that business process, is intelligence. And that intelligence is going to either kind of come bottoms up based on analytics that turn information into insight, but also it's going to come from how do we take information out of our heads and knowledge out of our minds and put it into that software. So there's a real, obviously that's truly disruptive and, probably beyond the topic of our conversation of what do we do with 30% unemployment as, the robots come to take all our jobs. But certainly in this kind of knowledge-based, area where there is some level of repetitive tasks, these types of tools, it's very much the game is starting to change from, on-premise apps to SaaS apps. It's moving now towards cognitive, and how do we use those apps to really deliver an outcome, to deliver business outcomes.
I agree that this has wide implications across many industries and across many facets of any particular business. But just to focus on what Tradeshift is doing with Go, what's interesting to me is that they're combining accessible but pertinent real-time streamed data, analyzing that in the context of a data environment, but they're also adding human agents. They're empowering humans who are very skilled in order to present very rapid returns back for fairly complex business problems. What is it about this combination of machine and human that perhaps is pushing boundaries today?
Well, I mean, I think what I like about how they went about this solution, first of all, is they started with the business problem and the outcome, which is, especially in mid-market organizations, but also for large enterprise, we want to focus on making the process of buying and traveling much easier and much more intuitive, but still obviously with some of the controls that you need to have in place. And the problem is that a lot of these processes have been very siloed across multiple places. So you have, your T&E reports. We have our P cards. We have maybe an e-procurement system here and there. Maybe in e-invoicing. So you have all these different little channels that are dealing with bits and parts of the problem, but it hasn't really come together as one kind of seamless experience. And the only way that you can really make that experience seamless is actually to have this combination of domain expertise around the process, software to kind of support it, and then more and more this area around around cognitive and these skills, and being able to first of all just empower humans to do this process better. Probably more of the repetitive tasks that those humans were previously doing will be more bot enabled rather than human enabled. That's just going to happen over time, but ultimately that frees up the humans to do higher value added activity rather than just these rote tasks.
Yeah, my sense is that it will start with rote, but it could very easily move up a value chain of intelligence. The other interesting thing to me is that they're using a messaging application motif, which people are very familiar with, and brings it to a democratization level where almost anyone in the organization can take part in this. Furthermore, what's interesting is the ability to act on it very rapidly. So when you create a virtual credit card, you're able to pay for something as rapidly as you are able to find it. It really brings decision-making and execution down to the fundamental level of whoever in the business needs to act, can act, and removes all those middle layers. To me, that's a fairly impressive productivity hit or benefit.
No, it is. I think actually what's nice about it is that, if you look at the changing workforce and how, millennials are entering the workforce, they are highly messaging based. So it's really accommodating a multi-channel world, right? And the fact that the style and the new UI, with the changing workforce is going to be messaging based. But just because it's quick and easy and real time and it's in a metaphor that they're familiar with doesn't mean that your need for controls goes away. And I think the thing that's attractive, we've got to see how it plays out with the platform capabilities that Tradeshift is increasingly bringing to bear, is the ability to kind of take these little atomic levels of services around. Do I do a budget check? Do I real time? How do I take what you're asking for and turn that the information into a commodity code or into a merchant code or into basically being able to translate all this complexity on the back end. That doesn't go away. You're just shielding the end user for it and allowing them to work in a style that's familiar to them. Because too often right now it's been a trade-off between ease of use and high controls. If you can really bring those two together, especially for this changing workforce, that's a huge win-win.
We hear a lot these days about the need for more productivity in our economy in general in order to create a better standard of living and increase wages and so forth. It seems to me that for many years, maybe generations, big business has had an advantage over smaller business. They've been able to integrate processes. They've been able to have efficiencies of scale. They've been able to buy and sell at scale. But now, when you look at some of these technologies like Tradeshift has brought to bear, maybe mid-market and small companies get an advantage that they can be fleet, agile, and use these services and cut their costs while being innovative all along. Do you share my sense that maybe this is a day and age where the smaller companies have an advantage?
Yes and no. I think I would probably vote for the school of piranhas over the shark any day. But I think the thing is that for those school of piranhas to win, they have to be able to assemble with each other at will and be able to so to do that requires a new level of orchestration and standing up business processes and the way to kind of get those going than what's been available in the past. So taking a traditional kind of enterprise architecture and, trying to stand up these kind of cloud-enabled, API-driven, services, in the cloud that are getting increasingly intelligent. It's just not possible with the older technology. So, I'm with you. And I think, but what it does require is a new class of technology to kind of stand up these new value chains, and these networks and business networks.
Of course, I suppose there's nothing really stopping even the largest companies from bringing some of this to bear inside their organizations. Atomic services means, yes, you have to change some processes, but it seems to me they might not have a choice when their competition perhaps gets there first.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's so much activity going on right now around digital supply chain and digital disruption because look what's happening to the supply markets. They are getting digitized and the supply chains are getting digitized. So who are the folks that are really responsible for helping the organization tap innovation from those supply markets? Hopefully procurement is taking a leadership role in doing that. So there is a real fork in the road here, for procurement to say, look, it's time to help us educate our stakeholders about how these value chains are going digital. So how can we tap that? And oh, by the way, procurement is a service provider too, and you're only going to get so much budget. So if you can figure out some disruptive ways about carving off stuff that makes absolutely no sense for you to be doing on an ongoing basis, you can really help automate that away so that you can focus your time on really going deep in certain categories and innovation projects and really doing things that are really going to make a difference. I mean, I always say the biggest cost in procurement is the opportunity cost of wasting your time on low-value activities, cost center stuff, and not really doing the true profit center, innovative, kind of things. Because ultimately, you got to evolve or you're going to die. It's called stay above the API, some people say.
It sure seems like we're now at a period where procurement can rise and become an evangelist within organizations for innovation across many different dimensions of the business that could have vast savings, but also put them in a highly competitive position when they could otherwise be disrupted. So here to the procurement people, go get them, right?
Absolutely. And, you got to work with IT and, and everybody else and work with your suppliers too. So you can't do it alone. But I think what's nice is you're finally starting to see some better options out there that you can, a much bigger utility belt of tools that you can use to kind of make it happen. Because otherwise, it's just not possible.
Last point, Pierre, it seems like it's incumbent upon organizations to get a bit more experimental. There's such a wide variety of new services coming on board. You might not want to bite the whole enchilada, but, do you share my opinion that being experimental, doing pilot projects, trying new things is extremely important these days?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this whole notion of self-funding is that it's just become part of the new normal. And the idea is, what can you actually do in the short term that can add some new incremental value, demonstrate credibility, engage your stakeholders, and in doing so, now you kind of, unlock getting to the next level where now you can build upon that. Or if it didn't work, great, you kind of redirect, but you kind of need to work towards a long-term, vision. So this is the part of where platforms and architecture and thinking some of this stuff through is important, so that you can do stuff, kind of in the short term and get some business results, but you want to work towards a more flexible and open architecture so that, you have options because, in procurement and for the stakeholders, it's all about having options and flexibility so that, that's what enables agility, right, is to be able to have those options. So.
Well, great. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. You've been listening to a BriefingsDirect Thought Leadership podcast discussion on how new modes of buying and evaluating goods and services are disrupting business procurement. And we've heard how technology innovations and new services from such suppliers as Tradeshift are translating into new business impacts. So please join me in thanking our guest. We've been here with Pierre Mitchell, Chief Research Officer and Managing Director at Azul Partners, where he leads Spend Matters procurement research activities. Thank you, Pierre.
Thanks, Dana. I've really enjoyed it.
And a big thank you as well to our audience for joining this Tradeshift-sponsored Business Innovation Thought Leadership discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator. Thanks again for listening, and do come back next time.